Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast.
That was a feisty welcome.
It was a happy welcome.
Yeah,
We're genuinely happy that
full of energy.
that people are here.
Look at you. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in, and you can visit patreon.com/speakingout. Check out the different tiers, different rewards,
Yes.
and feel free to join. But we do thank our patrons who continually support this podcast. We're going to jump right in. And we're going to talk about something. This subject keeps coming up over and over and over again. And I think that's not coincidence, so we may as well record a podcast on it.
Okay.
That's this issue of people touting themselves as experts. I'm increasingly, growingly starting to become annoyed at the word. Is that a word?
I don't know. I'll have to check that one out.
I think it's a word.
Maybe. Okay.
I'm getting more and more agitated at that word. I don't use that word expert to refer to myself. I've had other people tout me as an expert in child abuse prevention and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't like that term.
Right.
I do have experience in that, but I don't know, expert is such a subjective term, and it's being thrown around so loosely anymore.
We have an awful lot of experts out there, don't we?
Yep, we sure
in
do.
In every field. Yeah. A whole lot here.
So it's becoming increasingly problematic because legitimate degrees are becoming less and less important. And that's not necessarily in itself a bad thing. I think that degrees have been wielded as weapons where you have people who have degrees from prestigious colleges and universities and they're just lousy people and they're lousy at what they do.
I think we have to be careful, though, because in the professional world, degrees that deal with our health, our mental health, our state of being, I don't know about you, but I want a person with a real bona fide degree.
Absolutely.
I don't want them
to
be touted as an expert when they're just a Joe Schmo on the street.
That's right. And
I don't want to give my life over to somebody like that.
Yeah.
At all.
So I think for the sake of this podcast, I would love, we'll just give the conclusion now. I would love to see the word expert replaced with credibility.
There you go.
Because I'm telling you, this word expert is being thrown around so loosely. And when you hear that word, it unfortunately has an emotional undertone to it. And you're like, oh, wow, I'm talking to an expert. I've seen people who write books and they then begin to tout themselves as an expert because I wrote a book about such and such a subject.
I find myself getting sucked into these reels on TikTok. I was just telling you that I love to listen to some of them, but I'll tell you what, 99.9% of the people that are on there are saying they are experts in the field of farming, in the field of nutrition, in the field of mental health, in the field of weight loss, in the field of psychology, in the field of getting rich, in the field of finances, in the field, on and on and on. And whoa, you get sucked into that thinking, do I believe this one, that one, this one, that one, this one, that one? And you do a little research and you find out they're somebody just like me.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't have any degree any more than I do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But because they have a following,
right?
They'll tout themselves as an expert, or somebody else has touted them as an expert, and so they latch onto that and they're like, well, I'm an expert in this field. And a good example, and something you just mentioned, is nutrition. I just saw one the other day where this woman gets on and she makes this claim about something some kind of a fat that's in food, and she mentioned peanut butter. You guys have probably seen this stuff, like peanut butter that's being sold in the stores. It's it wasn't the hydrogenated oils. There was something in there that it was some kind of fat, and she said this has been banned in England and da 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 da, and they're selling poison, and it's absolutely poisonous to your body. There was a doctor who gone on, and he was like, this is why experts are really important, like actual experts. And he was like, and he explained the difference between the two different fats. And he said there was one that was banned in the UK, but that's not this fat that's in this peanut butter. Yeah. He was like, you can eat all the peanut butter you want as long as you don't have allergies. There's nothing wrong with it. This will not affect your health. So, it's that kind of thing where we have it in the realm of spirituality. I mean, that's what lends itself to so much abuse. And I said, we just had this conversation with our patrons in a live Q&A that we just did. It really bothers me that pastors tout themselves as counselors. I will never say I'm a counselor. I don't counsel people. I've been asked before, do you do counseling? I don't. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree in counseling. I'm not going to say that I do counseling. I don't do counseling. I'll sit and I'll listen to people.
You are rare in the realm of pastors.
I know, and it's crazy.
Rare person, because believe me, when I look at pastors, you will see next to their name they do counseling.
Biblical counseling.
Yeah, yes. Biblical counseling. They do marriage counseling. They do. Some of them do financial counseling. By the way.
Yeah.
So counseling with children. And I'm thinking, wow.
It's so dangerous. It's wildly dangerous because they're not counselors. Right. They don't have a license. They don't have a degree. And, unfortunately, a lot of state laws are really loose, and you're allowed to call yourself a biblical counselor, and you're allowed to counsel people. But I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere near that.
Agreed.
And again, I'll sit and I'll listen to somebody. If they want to talk, that's great. My door's open, or they can schedule an appointment, whatever. But I'm not a counselor. I'm just not. So, we have this growing problem, and it's in advocacy, where people tout themselves as experts in some experts in counseling, some experts in like memory recovery and things like that. And I'm like, you're not.
Trauma therapy,
right?
We have to be super careful.
Yeah,
we really do.
And so it's such a problem. But I'm going to give a couple examples of this, and this is not just in the realm of therapy and and spirituality, but it's kind of all over the place. So this is from a very recent Forbes article. It mentioned that 56 members of Congress hold $10,000 or more of student debt. Combined together, these 56 members of Congress, it's almost $6 million worth of student loan debt that they carry,
isn't it?
And they're the ones who are the expert lawmakers who are creating laws on relieving student debt. Would you say that's a conflict of interest?
A little bit. Just a little bit.
And I'm sorry, but 56 people who hold $6 million of debt, I'm not really interested in hearing your advice on money.
No. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
So it's just crazy. You have this kind of stuff going on. Well, let me talk about credit card debt. So credit card debt is at an all-time high in this country. All-time high. Think about that. Wrap your head around that. This article is from CNBC. Again, a recent article. This is March 9th. This is a few days ago. March 9th of this year. Title of the article by Jessica Dickler. Credit card debt is at an all-time high, putting households near breaking point, study shows. She mentions this study, and she puts a graph up. 900, looks like 950 billion is the tipping point where there's going to be a cascade of just generational debt that's irreversible. We are at $943.5 billion. So we're what, $6.5 billion away from hitting that tipping point. It's here. It's happening.
When I picked my mail up today, I had 4 different credit card companies send me invitations to get a credit card. And, it's just they're taunting out there. It's constant.
Absolutely.
Constant.
Absolutely.
Constant.
And the other thing is credit card companies aren't stupid. They know that there are going to be bailouts. We are entering a recession right now.
Right.
There is no question about that. Even the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, says we are entering. He finally admitted it's not transitory.
Yeah, finally.
We are entering a recession. And so these credit card companies know that they're going to be bailed out by the federal government. They know there's some way they're going to get their money. These credit card companies won't fail, but families will.
Yes, they will.
Mothers and fathers and children are going to be out of home. They're going to be living in the streets. That's a reality. It's going to happen.
It is. It's sad because we place our trust. It read, end high credit card debt. Transfer your. And I thought, I have one credit card. And the interest went up on that.
Way up, yeah.
Went way up. But years ago, I got sucked into this credit card mess. And I made a vow to myself, if I ever got out of it, I would never, ever, ever do that again. And I will not.
Yeah.
I just chunk down and pay that off. And
Yeah.
that's it. And it's not a lot, believe me. It's a few $100s.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean,
but for families,
it's not sustainable.
No.
And so I'm uninterested in hearing from the expert lawmakers, and I could name quite a few who absolutely, when I hear them talk about money, just basic economics, I'm like, you are completely uninformed.
Right.
You know nothing about balancing a budget.
And they're telling us.
And they're telling us that the only way is for the government to relieve all this debt and to incur, ironically, more debt. Who I want to hear from are people like Elon Musk, some of your wealthy people.
Right.
Who he has just tons of information out there, but credibility. He's somebody who's credible, and he's been sounding this alarm, and he's like, look, we cannot keep sustaining this amount of debt, and the government's out of control, and they're creating this debt. They're creating these problems for these families, and then they want to come in and be the superhero who relieves all this debt. How about instead, the government says, we're obviously clueless. We don't know the first thing about balancing a budget.
Bona fide people.
That's right. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take a fraction of the tax money that we were going to use, and we're going to pay some of these wealthy people to teach families how to budget, how to balance their budget, how to improve.
Be nice.
Their
yeah.
Their debt to pay ratio. We're going to get these people to train families for sustainable income that's going to keep them in their home and reduce their credit card debt and eventually eliminate their credit card debt. That would make more sense to me.
We deserve to hear the truth, but we're being bombarded with lies.
Right.
Constantly, just in every area of our lives.
Yeah. Here's a study directly from Social Security, SSA.gov. This was a study done a long time ago, back 2010. 4 out of 5 households approaching retirement in 2010 held debt. 4 out of 5. 80.2% of near retirees held household debt. Here's a recent one. This is also by Jessica Dickler, who wrote the other article, CNBC. This was in 2021. Nearly half of all Americans expect to retire in debt, survey finds. Why are we not being taught how to balance our budget in school, in high school, in college.
That's been an
They didn't
age
talk about
group.
this stuff when I went to school.
No.
They never talked about this stuff. It wasn't even on the radar. And I was a business major for one semester, and we didn't talk about this stuff. As a business major, we weren't talking about balancing budgets.
But we're hearing from all the experts now in every walk of life. There's experts that are financial experts. It's frightening what's out there, Jimmy. I feel like we have to be so careful in every area of our living. And as you alluded to in the very beginning, we have to really watch it in our churches, among counselors, among our mental health workers. We have to watch what's out there.
Absolutely.
Constantly be
Absolutely.
on guard. Constantly be on guard with who is labeling themselves as an expert.
Yes. So degrees are important, especially with therapy, and we're going to kind of focus on that more than anything else. I definitely, hands down, a degree is equally as important in therapy as a degree is important in the medical field.
Right.
With that said, again, people who tout themselves as experts, I would rather other people, patients, tout those experts as credible people. Credibility trumps expertise. And here's what I mean by that. I just in the last week, I had a friend, I have a friend who is a retired nurse, and he was telling me, like, he remembers this nurse berating a patient about their lifestyle choices, and you're not taking these medications and it's going to kill you. The nurse was literally on oxygen. He's this obese nurse who literally was on oxygen, berating a patient, saying you're not taking your meds at the right time, and you're destroying your body. Credibility trumps expertise.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but it does.
I had a nurse come teach a class for me. I was facilitating a stroke victim class. These people had strokes, and they were learning how to regain some of their strength back and whatnot. This nurse comes in. She is extremely obese. She reeks of smoke. She had been on her smoke break. And I just shook my head. I'm thinking, oh my word, this is the example that she is the one talking to this class when she's a living, walking, talking, possible stroke victim herself right there. Telling them how to watch your high blood pressure, make sure you get lots of exercise, eat nutritional foods, and stay away from smoking. And I'm thinking, oh, so yeah.
All right, class, let me let me teach you about health today.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean,
get it. Yeah,
we've got to use common sense, and at the end of the day, we had this whole conversation in our live Q&A, about picking therapists. Like, how do we find a trauma-informed therapist? And so we kind of, and our patrons gave a lot of really good advice too.
Yes, right.
But we are saying, like, somebody who holds a certificate and claims to be a therapist and claims to be a trauma therapist, probably want to steer away from. Like, I would like to see somebody not only who has a legitimate degree from a legitimate university for a legitimate field of science, but also has credibility from years of experience.
Right.
And we talked about the importance of reviews.
Yes.
Reviews are very important.
Very.
The other thing too, like we were just talking about this, I mean, right before we push record, the amount of people who tout themselves as experts, you got to watch out for this. I'm telling you, look, guys, oh my goodness, it drives me up a wall. It drives me up a wall.
Yeah, I know that. That's one of your big beefs.
It is.
Yeah.
Because
so.
in the field of advocacy, where ministry or whatever, when you're helping people, just do it. Just quietly put your head down, roll up your sleeves, and help people. If that's what you're good at, if that's what you're gifted at, just quietly roll up your sleeves. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, and help people. But I see people like, up clicking their social media and like, I'm so good at, I'm a people person and I'm so good at helping people, and people just come to me and I'm like, that just, it sits wrong with me.
Well, I think you're good at picking the fraud out of fraudulent, and you can see a person for who they are. I on the other hand used to be so trusting of everybody that if you sat there and told me you were a therapist, I would have believed it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have questioned it. We live in an age now where we have information available to us in seconds. We need to use that information. I no longer feel that I could, without checking a person out, talk to them as my therapist. I, would never do that. And I would read reviews, and I would, we talked about in our other session of interviewing the person before we sit down and have a therapy session. Who are you?
Right. That's right.
What are your degrees? May I see them? Where did you graduate from? How much experience do you have? What's your success rate with what you're doing? In the area of where I need help, how many years have you been practicing, and on and on. But man, oh day, we live in a world where experts are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
And, therapists and counselors and financial advisors and you name it are out on every street corner, but they're not bona fide true people. And we have to really
Right.
watch it. We really can get sucked into some trouble.
Well,
We really can.
and I see this too, and like in the field of finance, where people are like, it's all the get rich quick stuff. Take my course and you'll guaranteed in, whatever, 20 days, you'll be making more money now than you won't have enough wheelbarrows to carry all the money. And
Right.
I'm like, well, instead, wouldn't it be better to say, I think I'm good at what I do, but why don't you hear from people who've been through my program? Like, every wealthy person I know, like who's legitimately wealthy and honest, will say there's never such thing as get rich quick. Like, it just doesn't.
And I think
there are very few exceptions.
Very few.
It almost never happens.
And we have to do this. With the whole conversation came up in our other session with our followers.
Patrons.
I couldn't think of the right word. Patrons. The question came up, how do I find a good therapist? How do I know when there's so much quackery out there? And I'll just call it that. It's quackery. And, there are legitimate steps we should take to find that therapist, because just the way we can be led astray financially, that can happen mentally and think of, when a person experiences more damage, more harm than good, that's really hard to reverse. And often people will just give up and say, I'll never go to another therapist again.
Yeah.
It was a bad thing for me.
Yeah.
When we've, not been to a bona fide, really true
somebody
therapist.
who's credible.
Yes,
yeah.
credible.
Yeah, credibility is important.
It sure is, in any area of life.
So when people are bragging about themselves and they're saying, hey, I have so much success with my patients and all this stuff, for me it's a big red flag. The other thing is like this very good success rate, or this I have this success rate, or you'll find really fast relief, faster than going to any other therapist. Those are all for me red flags, and I'm like, what I'm more likely to migrate towards or to send people to is somebody who's really humble, who doesn't they don't care about all these big massive advertisements. They don't sell themselves.
Right.
they genuinely care about people. And they're like, you know what, like, I don't care if my business is like, on the front page of whatever. Like,
Right.
I'm just here to help people, and that's it. And I have the
Well,
credentials, I
that's
have the
not
degrees to back
saying.
it
I
up.
mean, there are some scientists and doctors and therapists and whatnot who are on the front pages of magazines, and rightly so. But I think what you're saying is, when I look at Facebook, I kind of gag anymore when I see people just bragging themselves up, and they have a ton of followers, by the way, just people who just cling to them because they are charismatic people. Very, very charismatic people can convince you of anything.
Yeah.
And I guess basically what Jimmy and I are saying is we're giving a warning. Do your homework before you submit to therapy. Therapy is great. We both believe in it. Both of us
Sure.
believe in
Absolutely.
therapy, and especially as related to trauma and abuse. But just be careful, do your homework, who you are subjecting yourself to. You can get really harmed by, going to the wrong person, believing the wrong person. It's as hard as it is, Jimmy, to believe there are abusive people out there among our friends and family members. It's equally as hard to believe that there are people who would pull the wool over our eyes, so to speak, and lie, just blatantly lie and say, I'm a counselor and I can help you. I have, there are liars. Uh,
Or
and,
any
and
kind of expert.
yeah,
Look at Ravi Zacharias. That
right.
guy was touted
Yes.
as the Christian apologist
Right.
in the world.
Yep.
And virtually everything
Wow.
about that man was a lie.
A lie.
Like
Yeah.
he touted himself as Dr. Ravi Zacharias. He didn't have a doctorate. He
And
had an honorary doctorate
yeah.
that some university gave to him, which those things they hand out like candy.
Right.
And it's not a degree. It's an honorary. It's literally a wall plaque that says, "Hey, this university respects me." But that guy was such a fraud.
And we don't like to
people,
question. We feel weird or somehow that we're being, I don't know, wrong to question a person's authority like that when they have a big following.
you can't say anything bad about Ravi. He's an
Yeah.
expert in
Right.
Christian apologetics.
Yeah.
No,
I
he
think
really
of
wasn't.
all the different big names that I know of that I've read some of their books and whatnot, and I put them down and think, wow, that's not in line with what I believe. Yet they are touted and they are bragged upon and placed, in a position of authority when like you've mentioned, okay, maybe they've written a book. That doesn't make
Yeah,
them
so what?
authority.
That's right.
Yeah, or credible in that area.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
anybody can write a book, and you can't say, "Well, I wrote a book, so I'm an authority on this subject." Not really. That just means that
You
you
have
wrote
to
a
just
book.
be very careful. Very, very, very careful.
Yeah,
anymore.
credibility.
Yes.
Check credibility. Are they credible? Are they dependable? Don't listen to what they're saying about themselves. Listen to what other people are saying about them. Are people and I'm not talking. Okay, hear me on this, because this is important. When I say what are other people saying about them, I don't mean the fans.
Right.
Ravi Zacharias,
Yeah.
even after all that stuff came out about him,
Still had. Oh
we had,
yeah. Still had fans.
we had Tim Tebow like tearing up, talking about what a wonderful man he was, just such a magnificent person. I'm not talking about fans,
Yeah.
people who are fanboying or fangirling over somebody. Like, are people genuinely being helped by these people? Those are the voices you want to listen to.
Right.
If you can't hear any of those voices, and that's being drowned out by all the fan club, all the fanfare and people, saying how magnificent they are, stay away. I mean, it's just not worth getting entangled in that.
I think there's a theme that we have. We've spoken lots on being careful within your churches, being careful among who we trust, period, with our children. be careful who we let in our homes, in our lives, in any way, shape, or form. We just need to be careful and not be backward in checking people out. That's our job.
Absolutely.
That's our job to do that.
Absolutely. And there's nothing in the world wrong with that.
No.
In fact, I think it's wrong if we don't check people out.
It is, and yet our tendency is to do what? Go along with the flow and believe.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, they're an expert, and how magnificent,
believe
how
what
wonderful,
we're told. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, how well they sell themselves. Well,
yeah.
Maybe we ought to, do a little bit of pausing and just use common sense and check out, are they credible? Credibility. That's the word for the day. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.